Hi, my name is Helen Garraway, and I am the USA Today Bestselling author of the Sentinel series. And I've also just released my fantasy romance series, which is called SoulMist. And the first book, SoulBreather, is published, and the second book, Dragonbound, is just gone on pre-order. You can find all my books on my website, which is www.helengarraway.com. And I'm really excited to be here today to do a live book reading for the Glasgow 2024 for the Indie Author Reading Library. I hope you enjoy the book that I'm going to read from, and it's going to be a chapter from book 4, Sentinels Across Time. And I chose Sentinels Across Time because it's currently a finalist in the Chanticleer International Book Awards, so it's really exciting. We're waiting to see if we've won a category winner, but I thought it would be nice just to read a chapter from that book for a change. So my Sentinel series is epic fantasy and started with Sentinels Awaken, which I published in 2020. And I'm now 5 books in, plus a couple of novellas, which is really exciting. And Sentinels Awaken, in effect, is the story of a King's Ranger who accidentally awakens a sleeping sentinel who was one of the lady's personal guards. And they've been sleeping in these tall sentinel trees for over 3,000 years since the lady last was on the world of Remagerin. And she sundered the Bloodstone to protect her people, and by doing so, she took all magic away with her and banished herself, as well as the Ascendants who were threatening her world. Her personal guard couldn't go with her, so she encased them in these sentinels' trees to protect them. And they've been sleeping until the world is under threat again and needs their assistance. And Gerald in Sentinels Awaken wakens the first sentinel and a few others. And then they go on this epic journey to identify who is threatening the world. And they travel through all the different territories and regions, from leafy Vesperi to the deserts of Tyrolia in Sentinels Rising, to the mountainous icy wastes of Sentinels Justice in Elothia. And then in Sentinels Across Time, it's 2 years after the climax of the battle with the Ascendants, and we're actually visiting Bertoli, which is an island archipelago. So we're now into which you could probably equate to like the tropical islands or the Caribbean islands. It's a nice, beautiful area that once was connected to the mainland, but is now a series of islands. And Gerald, who's the King's Ranger who originally woke the Sentinels, has been living a peaceful life for 2 years for a change, but that's about to change as the lady has ripped him away from his family and needs him to help her with a new task. So Sentinels Across Time, he's disappeared, so nobody knows where he's gone, and now they're all trying to find him and to see what's actually happening. And in chapter 4, Gerald has just disappeared, so everybody's in a bit of a panic. So here we go, chapter 4, present day. So this is going to be a bit of a time slip, but this chapter is in the present day, and it's January 22nd in the year 4128 and Stoneford Keep. Stepping through the waystone to Gerald's cottage, Valerian's heart thrummed in his chest. He shivered in the chill air and sheltered against Kinnerol. Ari had harried Valerian and Kinnerol all the way to the nearest waystone before popping out of sight. Talia appeared in the cottage door, her baby strapped to her chest and a sleepy Mika by her side. Mika was dressed in a mishmash of clothes, evidence of Talia's distress. Her face screwed up as she saw Valerian, and she tried not to cry. Valerian gently wrapped her in his arms as the tears trailed down her cheeks. "We'll find him," he murmured, hugging her close. "I'm so glad you're here. I didn't know what to do, Valerian. He disappeared right in front of me. The lady took him." "We'll find him," Valerian repeated. "I was going to go to Jason." Valerian glanced around him. "Where are your guards? That was the deal. You would have one within call at all times." "Don't. They are searching, but I know they won't find him. We had settled for the night. They couldn't have done anything. I should have been here. I knew it." "It was the lady, Valerian. You couldn't have stopped her." "I could have gone with him." "If you were supposed to be with him, you would be. So don't start castigating yourself for actually taking a break. You deserve a life too, Valerian. It's not your fault." Valerian stared at her, his face tense. He should be at Gerald's shoulder. That's where he belonged. "You're here because I need you. You keep me together. Please, Valerian, stay with me. I need you." Valerian stilled, and then heaved a deep sigh. He smiled down at Mika, who was leaning against his leg. "Hi, Mika. Look, Kino's here. He wanted to see you, he said as he lifted the little boy into his arms and then onto Kinarol's back. Beleriand rubs in Talia's white nose. I think we should go straight to Vespers. Talia sagged against him in relief, and Beleriand peeked at the baby swaddled against her chest. He smiled and then shivered as a gust of wind ripped around them. He helped Talia mount. Kino, tell Pip to follow. I have, the deep voice of his Darien replied. Mika clung onto Kino's saddle as Beleriand led them through the waystone and stepped out by the palace entrance. Mika began retching, and Beleriand lifted him off and hugged him tightly, murmuring in his ear until the little boy relaxed. Gerald had created a waystone that all could use. It was a bit difficult leading a horse out of his sentinel tree in the king's inner courtyard, but even so, non-sentinels tended to suffer, as Mika was. Beleriand's friend Caeril had a theory that Darians muted the effect, which might be true, as Talia swallowed fiercely as her face paled, but managed not to retch, and Laeril seemed fine. Beleriand helped Talia dismount, and then shifted Mika so he rested against his shoulder. The little boy drooped and snuggled his face against Beleriand's neck, exhaling as he closed his eyes. A stable lad came running and led the Darians off to the stables. Come, let us find the king, Beleriand suggested. Then we can get the little ones to bed. I am sure your rooms will have been made ready. Beleriand wrapped his free arm around Talia's shoulders and gently steered her towards the entrance. Nihilarion came running out of the palace as they climbed the steps. Beleriand, how did you know? Talia, what happened? The oath is acting strange. It's a brilliant blue. Beleriand fended him off, shielding Talia from the explosive questions. Let's get the children inside first. It's freezing out here, he said, as he led her to the king's chambers, Nihilarion hovering behind them. Darius opened the door as they approached, his concerned gaze embracing them both as he waved them in. King Benedict stood as Beleriand and Talia were ushered in. He knew he wasn't going to like what she had to say when he saw her pale face and huge eyes, and the fact that Beleriand was barefoot and ill-dressed for the season. Talia, my dear, please come in. Sit. Darius, some tea, please. He led Talia to a chair. Beleriand, lay the boy on the settee. We'll get him to bed shortly. And is this young Laeril? Congratulations, my dear. Well done. Benedict would never admit that he prattled, but he did prattle to fill the void. Talia unwrapped Laeril and wedged her in the opposite corner to Mika. The king continued talking until Darius returned with the tea and cake, and then left to find Beleriand some warmer clothes. Benedict made sure that Talia had a cup before he looked at her gravely. What happened? He asked. I had a dream, Talia said, staring down at her tea. Just after Laeril was born, I dreamt that Gerald disappeared right before my eyes, but when I awoke the next morning, he was there, next to me. When I told him, he promised he would always come back to me wherever he went. He said there was nowhere in this world he could not return from. He reassured me that he wouldn't stop trying, and I thought nothing of it. But this evening, I was in the kitchen when I heard him cry out. He said, "My lady, no," and then he faded away. I searched the house and the stable, but he wasn't there. He was gone. I was going to go to Jason's when Beleriand arrived. Beleriand nodded. Ari came for me. King Benedict gave the lean sentinel a searching glance. He was shivering in his thin clothes. He must have been worried enough to drop everything. Nihilarion said the oath is acting strange, Talia said, taking a deep breath. Do you think the lady has a job for Gerald? We'll send sentinels to Tyrolia and Elothia, the king said slowly. But I have an awful feeling this is going to be connected to our visit to Bertoli. Don't ask me why, but with the other regions settled, there is no reason for the Oathkeeper to be called. Why would the oath pulse blue, though? Is there any record of it changing colour? We've got Lillian searching the archives, but the oath is not chronicled much. They won't find anything, the king said. Come look at the oath, see what you think. Darius will keep an eye on the children. Benedict led the way to the throne room, and the guard on duty pushed open the doors. They stood before the oath and stared. Red highlights roiled in the blue glare, flaring gently at the edges. The blue light pulsed, and it was clearly unsettled. It was impossible to read the words engraved in the wall. The glare was so bright. Talia rubbed her face. How are we supposed to know what to do? We are just guessing. How do we find him? How do we help him? I think we will only find that out if you come with me to Bertoli. A scholar of your caliber should be able to find the clues to his whereabouts, the king suggested. Clues, Talia frowned. That's what Gerald said when he was trying to reassure me. He said he would leave me clues, write memoirs, terrible songs, find things that would stand the test of time. She looked at the king. Why would he say such things unless the lady was guiding him? She flinched as the oath flared a brilliant gold before returning to its unsettled glare. That's confirmed, then. You need to come with us. Darius will arrange it all. But the children, I can't leave them here. Then bring them with you. Talia laughed for the first time since she had arrived. A 2-year-old and a baby on a ship with you. Are you sure, Your Majesty? The king smiled. I'm about to become a grandfather. I could use the practice. Within a week of Ribarian's ship, the Lady's Miracle, arriving in port, they were all loaded aboard and headed for the island empire of Bertoli. Talia had sent a message to Deepwater, begging Hannah to accompany her, and Hannah had deserted Jenny and Alyssa immediately. With Hannah looking after the children, Talia had dived into the chapter house archives, researching the history of Bertoli, finding out as much as she could before they left. Ribarian leaned on the railing of the upper deck and watched Talia stare out to sea. It only seemed like yesterday that he had officiated at her joining to Gerald, here on the Miracle, becalmed on the silver ocean under the lady's moon. A magical few days before their arrival in Elothia, nearly 3 years ago. Gerald had been sent as the king's emissary to the Grand Duke of Elothia, trying to sue for peace and avoid all-out war with Vesperi. Unfortunately, the Grand Duke had not been the elderly man they had expected to meet, but his son, new to the throne and influenced by the warmongers among his advisers. Things had not gone to plan, and Gerald had been lost, thought dead. Ribarian's mouth twisted at the memory of the months of anxious waiting for Gerald's return. It had been a fraught time for all. He had thought Gerald and Talia had settled down now, that they had Mika and Laeriel, and the world was at peace. Taeriel suddenly turned and looked up, their eyes connected, and Ribarian raised a hand in greeting. Talia made her way along the decks to the steps, and Balerian held out a hand to help her up to the upper deck. Thank you, she breathed as she shielded her eyes. She had to look up at him, as Ribarian was a typical Sentinel, tall and broad-chested, with bright silver eyes that stood out against his deep brown face. He smiled. I was remembering the last time you were aboard with Gerald. It seems so long ago, yet I keep thinking I could turn around at any moment and he will be standing right behind me. We'll find him, Ribarian promised. I know, it's just... Talia's breath caught. Why is it always him? I mean, I only just got him back, truly. He's only just begun to forgive himself for everything, and now this. Valerian's lips twisted. Who else would you trust the fate of our world with? I don't think anyone else could untangle the mess we seem to be able to create. There are other Sentinels. One of you could be promoted. Lady forbid, Ribarian breathed. Talia glared at him, and Ribarian laughed as he held up his hands as if to fend her off. Don't look at me like that. I mean it. We're just soldiers. We couldn't negotiate our way out of a paper bag. We pile straight in. He paused. Well, maybe not Valerian, but I think he's been through enough too. I wouldn't wish it on him either. Talia huffed. It's not fair. I know, but there is only one captain. No, there isn't. There's 2. If there can be 2, why not 3 or 4? I don't think it works like that. And anyway, Galère isn't actually here, as you know, so there's only one, really. At least the captain is still with us on Remagrin. How do you know that? Where is he? Ribarian shrugged. I just know he's here somewhere, waiting for us to find him. Talia staggered against him as the deck canted in a sudden swell, and Ribarian wrapped an arm around her to steady her. He squeezed her shoulders. We'll find him, he repeated. Talia nodded. We have to, she murmured as she looked out to sea, sheltered by the strong arms of the Sentinel. Later that afternoon, Talia sat with the king at the dining table in Ribarian's large day cabin, which the king had taken over, briefing him on the island empire's history. She was utterly fixated on researching the subject. She was a bit annoyed that Valerian and Hannah had ganged up on her and resorted to asking the king to demand her presence at every meal, but it was the only way they could get her head out of the manuscripts. Batoli used to be joined to the Vesperian mainland, she said, a solid stretch of land down past where the island of Senti now lies. They say it took 4 days to sail around the Horn. It also says that much of Batoli was drowned when the lady sundered the Bloodstone. Many low-lying islands and their people were lost forever. The census taking the following year shows a reduction of over half the population. It must have been awful. Eat, the king said, tapping her plate with his knife. Talia took a mouthful and chewed. The emperor's palace at Melinti was actually built in 1136. Well, it was finished in 1136. It took over 15 years to build. That was fast, considering the tools of the time. They must have had some clever stonemasons. She jotted a note on her pad. Eat, the king repeated, a smile in his eyes as he watched her. Talia gave a martyred sigh and addressed her plate. She suddenly realized she was starving. When is the empress due to give birth? She asked politely as their plates were cleared away. Well, the best guess is the week of the 7th, but I promised I would be there a few weeks before for the state visit, just in case. She seemed quite distressed, so I said we'd stay until the baby arrived. Just seeing you with Laeril and Mika warms my heart. I'm looking forward to having a grandchild. Even when you know you'll be ordering him down from the rigging with your heart in your mouth? Talia asked, remembering the heart-stopping moment when she had seen Mika halfway up the ship's rigging, determined to see the crow in its nest. Hannah swore she had only taken her eyes off him for a moment. He had won over every single sailor with that escapade. The child had no fear. The king laughed. Well, I doubt my grandchild will have the same opportunities that Mika has to get into trouble, but I think your boy will be an excellent friend for my grandchild to have. Has Hannah recovered yet? He asked, his clear blue eyes glinting with amusement. Valerian took Mika up to steer the ship so she could have a rest. So if we are suddenly heading in the wrong direction, you'll know why. The king smiled and raised his cup in salute. To our children, may their sense of adventure never fail. Talia raised her cup in return. And their fathers, who are surely to blame. So that's chapter 5 of Sentinels Across Time, and I hope you enjoyed it and you're intrigued to find out more about the Sentinels. And if you haven't started the series yet, then Sentinels Awaken is the place to start. If you sign up to my newsletter on my website, which is helengarraway.com, you can download a free novella, Sentinels Stirring, which is set about 7 years before Sentinels Awaken, and gets shows you when some of the main characters like Gerald and Talia first met as much younger kids. And there's also a bonus download called Sentinels Discovery, which is the first few chapters of Sentinels Awaken from Valerian's point of view. So Valerian was the first Sentinel that Gerald awoke. So you can see how he reacts to being woken 3,000 years in his future. A very terrifying scenario for anybody, I think. So hopefully you enjoyed the reading. I hope you enjoy all the other readings that are in the reading library, Indie Author Reading Library. And I look forward to connecting with you over social media, which you can find all of my social media locations on my Linktree, which is linktree.ee/Helen Garraway. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy Glasgow 2024.
Thank you for watching this reading. Find more Indie Author Reading Library performances on our YouTube channel, along with our Meet the Author interviews and recordings of previous panels. Hit subscribe to get notifications for every new video. Find us at glasgow2024.org and as Glasgow in 2024 on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Check out our cool merch on redbubble.com/people/Glasgow2024/shop and consider joining by emailing volunteers at glasgow2024.org.